Hello, and welcome back to MysHistory. I'm Rhonda, and this is where I talk about odd or unsolved historical mysteries. And if that sounds like something that you might enjoy, then please consider subscribing. I hope you've all been well. Today, this case is the case that I stumbled upon that made me want to start this particular series. An avalanche? A Yeti? Or murder? It was 1959. It was winter in Russia when a group of hikers would embark upon a journey into the Ural Mountains of the then USSR, led by Igor Dyatlov. Again, since we're in another country, I will do my best to say things correctly, but it's Russia. Sorry, people of Russia. Like I said, it was January of 1959. A group of friends were setting out to hike through the slopes of Kulat Siekal, which is translated as Dead Mountain, which is what I'm going to say from here on out. The Ural Mountains are known for their rough terrain and their brutal conditions, with temperatures that time of year reaching as cold as minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Brr. This group was from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, and they were all experienced hikers. It is said that the group had made similar hikes in the past, so for them, this was just going to be another fun outing. Several members of the group kept journals to record their trip. They also brought cameras. Igor was a radio engineering student at UPI and was said to have been an elite skier and hiker. He's going to be leading this group on this expedition through the Ural Mountains, which was expected to be a 16-day trek and would cover over 190 miles through the North Ural Mountains of Edorton. It is said that all 10 of the hikers, 8 men and 2 women, were grade 2 hiker certified, and they had ski tour experience. After completing this expedition, each of them was expected to receive the Soviet Union's highest certification possible at that time, which was grade 3. On January 23rd, with the approval of the Sverdlovsk City Route Commission, the group would receive their route book that listed the course as following what was known as the Number 5 Trail. On January 26th, the group would hitch a ride in the back of a truck from Viesha to the District 41 logging site, where one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, would complain of sciatic pain, and he made the choice to return home rather than to join the group for their journey. On January 27th, the friends would continue their journey on foot into the mountains. The group would set up caches of surplus food in a highland area on January 31st, along with other equipment that they would need for the trip back to that logging site. According to journals from the group, February 1st was a late start, and it was noted that the route that they had chosen was difficult even for them as experienced hikers. They reportedly walked 2.5 miles before setting up camp on the slope of Dead Mountain, which is 10 miles from Mount Edorton. The route of the group was to lead them through the northern regions of Sverdlovsk Oblast along the upper streams of the Luzva River. The goal of the group was to reach Mount Edorton. It was reported that the group lost their direction in the severe conditions that had started to occur, and they veered west a little bit. Upon realizing their mistake, they decided to go ahead and set up camp where they were on the slope of the mountain rather than moving downhill to a more forested area where they would have been better protected from the weather. Reportedly, the temperatures that night were somewhere between -13 and -22 degrees Fahrenheit. It was speculated by Yuri Yudin, who had to leave the expedition, as I said, quote, Dyatlov probably did not want to lose the altitude they had gained, or he decided to practice camping on the mountain slope. From the research that I was able to find, Igor was supposed to send telegrams of the group's location to their sports club once they returned to Vizha. This should have been no later than February 12th. The club received no telegram on February 12th, but didn't consider it to be anything to worry about, considering that sometimes with expeditions of that long, there could be a delay, especially with such severe weather conditions. That said, when the relatives of the hikers demanded a rescue operation on February 20th, a group of volunteer students and teachers was sent out. Eventually, the Army would become involved, along with planes and helicopters. Finally, on February 26th, searchers found the abandoned tent of the hikers, which was badly damaged. According to one of the searchers, quote, the tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty, and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left behind. According to investigators, it looked as if the tent had been cut open from the inside, and there were 9 sets of footprints leading away from it, appearing to have been left by people wearing only socks. Remember, it was below zero, and there are footprints in the snow of people wearing no shoes. They would follow the footprints down the hill to the edge of a forested area, about 500 meters before the tracks were covered with snow. This next bit is going to contain images of the bodies that were found, and if you are sensitive to that type of material, please feel free to skip ahead to the next section. Under a large tree, searchers found visible remains of a small fire, and it was there that the first 2 bodies were found, with no shoes and wearing only underwear. They would find 3 more bodies a short distance away who were said to have died in poses suggesting that they were attempting to return to the camp. Sadly, they would not find the remaining members of the group for 2 months. On May 4th, buried under 13 feet of snow in a ravine further in the woods from where the first 5 members of the group were located, the remaining hikers were found. There were signs that they were wearing more clothing than the 3 hikers found months earlier, with one member wearing burned, torn trousers, and her left foot and shin were wrapped in a torn jacket. This is suggestive that this group of 4 took the clothing of their companions who were already dead so that they could use them to keep warm. An inquest to the accident was started pretty quickly after finding the first 5 bodies. Apparently, a medical exam found no injuries that may have led to their deaths, so it was concluded that they died of hypothermia. Official reports would list their deaths as follows: Igor, Yuri D, Yuri K, Alexander, Zenadia, and Rustem all died of hypothermia. Ludmila from internal bleeding due to a severe chest trauma, Nikolai from a fatal skull injury, and Alexander Z from severe chest trauma. The injuries of Nikolai, Ludmila, and Alexander Z is said to have required as much force as that of a car accident. It was noted that they had no external wounds that you would typically find associated with like bone fractures or soft tissue damage, suggesting that they had been subjected to a high level of pressure. The 4 bodies found in May were in a creek of running stream water and did have some soft tissue damage to their heads and faces. One was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips, as well as fragments of facial tissue and skull bone. One of the men was missing his eyeballs, and a third was missing his eyebrows. According to a forensic expert, these injuries happened after they were already dead due to the location of the bodies being in a stream. The inquest files stated 6 of the group died of hypothermia and 3 of fatal injuries. No indications of people nearby outside of the hikers. The tent was ripped from inside. The victims died 6 to 8 hours after their last meal. Traces showed that the group left their tent of their own accord on foot with no shoes. There were some levels of radiation found on one victim's clothing. There was no information about the condition of the hikers' internal organs. There were no survivors save for Yuri Yudin, who did not make the journey due to his sciatic pain. And it was concluded that the group had died due to, quote, compelling natural force, and the inquest was officially closed in May of 1959, and all the files were sent to a secret archive. One theory that was initially investigated was that the group was attacked by an indigenous people in the Mansi area. The Mansi people are reindeer herders, and it was speculated that they perhaps attacked and murdered the group for encroaching on their land. Many Mansi people would be questioned, but it was concluded that due to the fact that the only footprints found belonged to the hikers, this was not a good lead. It does lead, though, to the question of why would they have fled their tent partially dressed? What happened that made them run out into the frigid cold? In 2019, Russia would reopen the case and conduct a new investigation wherein they were considering 3 possible explanations: an avalanche, a snow slab avalanche, a hurricane. As for the two avalanche theories, maybe. But a hurricane? I know, it sounded weird to me too. But with the avalanches, there was no sign that one had taken place. To be worthy of note was the fact that when they found the first 3 bodies, they were covered in only a very shallow layer of snow. Since this incident has happened, well over 100 expeditions in that same area have occurred, and no one has ever reported an avalanche. The snow slab theory. This type of avalanche occurs when a weak layer of snow beneath a packed layer breaks free and pulls the top layers down the slope. Given the fact that both one of the Alexanders and Igor were experienced hikers and skiers, neither was likely to set up a camp in an area that could be in the potential path of an avalanche. That said, given that the group had gotten off course, is it possible that due to the severe conditions, they weren't aware of exactly where they were? So, some other things that I learned while researching this. Allegedly in 2018, the remains of Simeon were exhumed. Apparently, the DNA recovered from her body did not match the DNA of living relatives. And, according to what expert, she had injuries resembling that of a person hit by a car. Add to the fact that her name is not on the list of those buried at Ivanskoye Cemetery, and you've got a puzzler. All of that conspiracy aside, a facial reconstruction was completed, and it did match known photos of her. But there are journalists who think that another person was using her name and running around as her after the Second World War. Why? Because Soviet Union, a 12-year-old boy, would grow up to become the head of the Dyatlov Foundation here. I can't say that word. And he would say that he attended the funerals of 5 of the group's members, and one thing that he noted was that they all had, quote, a deep brown tan to their skin. Years after the incident, another group of hikers would come forward and report that they saw strange orange spheres in the sky to the north on the night of the incident. This group was said to have been hiking about 31 miles south of the incident. Apparently, there were other spheres that were observed in Aivdel and other adjacent areas between February and March of 1959, as noted by independent witnesses. None of these sightings were noted in the original investigation. This would lead one of the original investigators to come forward in 1990 and publish an article in which he admitted that the team had no rational explanation for the incident, further stating that he and his team reported seeing a flying sphere, but received orders from high-ranking officials to dismiss the claim. Awesome. One of the photos developed from one of the cameras found at the group's campsite appears to be a Yeti. Could the Yeti have scared them from their tent so badly that they left wearing clothing that was not suitable for the conditions that they were in? And if so, why were there no Yeti footprints found anywhere? Finally, we get to a reasonable explanation. Maybe. So as I stated, it was originally suggested back in 2019 that it was perhaps an avalanche that killed the hikers in 1959. But since there was something that didn't add up, the deaths remained a mystery. Until a man by the name of Johann Raum, who's the head of the Snow Avalanche Simulation Laboratory at EPFL, he was watching the movie Frozen. That's right. Disney would come to the aid of the avalanche theory. As the story goes, Johann was amazed at how well the snow moved in the movie. Having never seen the movie, I have no frame of reference. Johann would reach out to the animators to see how they managed to make the snow move like it did. After he met with them, he was able to modify the snow's animation code and simulate the impacts an avalanche could have on the human body. Remember, 2 hikers had chest fractures and 1 had a skull fracture. Dyatlov Pass is not considered textbook avalanche terrain, but Johann's research was able to show that a block of snow in that area could very easily break ribs and skulls. So, was it as simple as a slab avalanche? There are still many out there who believe it was far more nefarious than that. But this does seem a reasonable explanation. The snow could have crushed the tent as the hikers lay sleeping, thus jolting them awake and fleeing the tent into the cold in whatever they were sleeping in. Perhaps they didn't think they had time to dress accordingly due to the heavy snow on the tent. I don't know. While the avalanche theory does maybe seem too easy, which I understand, photos of the tent appear not to have been too buried, and their items in the tent were still folded neatly. So, it's still a mystery for many people to try to solve. What are your thoughts? Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell icon to receive notification every time I post a new video, which is every Tuesday. And next month, it will be Tuesdays and Thursdays. Until next time, stay safe out there. It's a crazy world.